Hello, welcome to the Rose Floral School show. I am Catherine. Today is episode 1, and I'm excited to get started. So let's dive right in. So, episode 1, like I said, is today. The topic is my average wedding week schedule. So, today we're going to just talk about what my week is like on an average wedding week. Of course, this varies. Every week is different as a business owner, especially in the wedding industry. But I thought this would be helpful just to show a little bit of my workflow. You'll pick up some cool tidbits on the way. And, I think it'll just be exciting to talk about. So, with an average wedding week, the main thing that drives my week is my systems. So, whether that's, the process of how I make a boutonniere, which dictates what day I make them, and, all these little pieces, the system of moving a bride from, you know, needing her final order to be signed up to where she is signed, delivery, day of, even after the wedding. So, anyway, I think a strong system will drive your week. And so here you'll hear a little bit about some of my systems. So let's start. Of course, the first day is Monday. So being in the wedding industry, of course, I work a lot of weekends, Saturdays, sometimes Sundays. I know some wedding industry people take their Mondays off, which, this is my schedule. With your schedule, do what fits you. Listen to your needs, know yourself, know what works well for you. For me, if I were to take Monday completely off, I would get way too antsy. I would be too anxious. I want to cross these things off my list and not, make more work for myself later. My husband works on Mondays, so it works out for me to work Mondays too. Now, a typical Monday, I wake up, do some morning routine things, take my dog for a walk, drink my water, make my coffee. I wouldn't say that I'm like up and at 'em the very most on a Monday morning. I will try to give myself an easy morning if I can, but then I stick right into my emails. So I go through my inbox. Typically, I have emails from over the weekend, a lot of times Thursdays and Fridays from the week before. I might not have, replied to anything that wasn't super urgent because I was working on a wedding. So I'll go ahead and go through all my emails on Monday, get rid of the junk mail first. That's my favorite thing to do. And then just dive into replying to emails. I also go over my 2-month out list. So for my wedding season, I have an entire chart, like a spreadsheet, basically, where it has the couple's name, date, how much their contract is for, where their venue is, what stage they're at. So whether they are paid in full, ready to go. If I've emailed them and I'm waiting for the final order, things like that. And basically, my workflow is that once a wedding is 2 months out, that's when I reach back out to the couple to finalize their details, get their delivery information, and just go over any last questions. So once they come up on my chart and their wedding is within that 2-month point, I'll go and send those rounds of emails. Now, 2-month is kind of general. Some couples, it's closer to a month and a half. For some, it is more like 2 months. I like to just look and see, okay, I've got, 3 weddings that are within 2 months, so I'll send them all at once. If I have another wedding that is a week later, I might wait 2 or 3 weeks. So technically it's less than 2 months. But that way I'm not doing 1 email, 2 emails every single Monday. I can do 3 or 4 all at once. So anyway, so going over my 2-month out list includes reaching out to couples that are 2 months out to start to finalize, looking back over the couples who already got that email to make sure, if they need any follow-up, if they had changes and I have to send their new list over to confirm. And then also looking at the weddings that are within 3 weeks or less and making sure my wholesale list is placed for them. So I go through all of that. And like I said, I have all of that on one spreadsheet so I can see like, okay, they need an email, they need a follow-up, and they need their wholesale order placed. Boom, boom, boom. I go ahead and do that. And then the main other thing that I do is print and prep for the wedding that week. Now, 95% of the time, when a couple sends their final payment and their final order confirmation to me, that's when I go ahead, print out their recipe sheets, print out their rental details, print their final order, and get all of that set, organized, and squared away. So most of the time, this basically involves taking their folder out. I do use actual file folders. I have digital copies of everything, but somehow for me, a paper copy in front of me on wedding week is what I prefer. So I bring their file out. I will look in there. And like I said, most of the time I have their recipe sheet right there. I already have assigned which day I will make which items on their sheet. So I just kind of look it over, make sure it looks good. I'll double check their hard goods list and make a little shopping list if I need to get really specific hard goods. I typically keep myself pretty stocked with things like tape and design dishes and bridesmaid vases. But if one bride needs a terracotta orange fabric to drape on her arbor, I will note that and get that usually the week of the wedding. It just helps so I don't have to store it and remember that I already have it or accidentally buy two, whatever. I get it that week, I use it that week, in and out. That's what I prefer. And then Mondays, I do whatever I want for the rest of the day. Sometimes this is working. A lot of times it's working on things for Rose Floral School. Sometimes it's house projects, hanging out with my dog, getting coffee with a friend, babysitting my nieces or nephews. But I do try to be flexible with myself on Mondays if I do want to chill because I work on Saturdays. So make a little space for myself. That's Monday. Tuesday is, again, sitting down in the morning and doing emails with my coffee. That just tends to be like a Monday and Tuesday morning pattern for me, just catching up and keeping things at bay so that I'm not overloaded with emails later in the week when I have wedding flowers in my workroom. A lot of times I will schedule consultations for Tuesdays. I just like having consultations when I don't have the wedding flowers in yet. But I also don't like doing them Mondays just because like I'm still recalibrating from the weekend, putting my house back together from just like the laundry and dishes over the weekend. So I don't like to do consultations Mondays. I prefer not to do them when I'm having design days for a wedding. So Tuesdays, I love a consultation on a Tuesday. Does not always go that way, but if I can, I plan consultations for Tuesdays. And then again, if I have some spare time, usually it's things like house projects, or that's my main time taker right now. But I will do a little bit of whatever I want for the remainder of the Tuesday. Also, I didn't mention this off the front. This is based on a typical wedding week, which for me is a wedding on a Saturday. I didn't want to start with double weddings or a Friday wedding or anything like that. I thought just start with the most basic, straightforward, typical type of wedding week, which for me is a single wedding on a Saturday. Now, I do a lot of double weddings, but especially if anyone is just starting out, it's more likely that you're doing a single wedding in a weekend. So anyway, so that would be Tuesday. Wednesday is when my wedding, like official wedding work really begins. I tend to switch gears mentally by Wednesday. And yes, I might do some email things. I might do some Rose Floral School things. But for the most part, I'm starting to get into like wedding brain. So Wednesday is when I do wholesale pickup or I have them delivered to me or both. It just kind of depends on which wholesalers I'm using that week. I will process the flowers. So that means cleaning the buckets, cutting the stems, taking off the plastic, pulling the leaves off the bottom, all those things, get them all hydrating for me. And also I should mention, I do have staff that help during the weekdays. I didn't have regular staff for a while. I had very like intermittent staff for a few years. This year is my first year with pretty regularly scheduled staff. I have one woman right now who is coming. She's amazing. She comes Wednesdays and Thursdays for most wedding weeks. And she is awesome. So just felt like I should mention that. But like I said, even 3, 4, definitely 5 years ago, it was just me on wedding weeks. On wedding days, I did have help even then, sometimes, but not that long ago, it was just me. Anyhow, so doing the things like prepping the hard goods. So washing all of the vases and setting them aside. And then this will depend on the week. So if there's bud vases, we wash and fill those with water. We also make sure that we have carrying crates set for them and kind of designated. Get together boxes for boutonnieres and corsages, boxes for the bouquet delivery. If I'm using chicken wire for arbor pieces, I'll prep that. If I have design bowls for centerpieces, we'll prep that. We prep any hard good that we can. And a lot of hard goods too, I will say things like boutonniere boxes, the first couple weddings of the year, the first few weeks, if there's any spare time, we just make a bunch. So I have a box in my studio that has maybe 20 boutonniere boxes in it. So sometimes it's like, oh, we need 3 boutonniere boxes this week. You're just taking them off the pile, but still having them set aside, designated, ready to go, makes the rest of your week a lot easier. So I like to do that. Sometimes we will design boutonnieres and corsages on Wednesday. This is mostly if it's a larger wedding or if I have double weddings, or just if they have a ton of boutonnieres and corsages, maybe I'll want to get a head start. If you want to know how I can design so early, these, the personal flowers, let me know. It's with a hydration chamber. I have some information on it that I can share to you. So anyway, sometimes I will do them on Wednesday. And then again, same idea. If it's a big wedding, if we have 2 weddings, whatever, sometimes we'll start greening the centerpieces. So that means putting the greenery in, not the blooms yet. I like to wait on those a little bit, but we will start greening if we need to and if we want to. Whew, all right, Thursday. So Thursday, one of the things that happens almost every Thursday, we set aside the bouquet stems. So I have tall, like larger vases that I make. I don't actually make them in, but I use for the bouquets before they get switched to a small, cute little delivery vase. This way the water is really fresh for delivery and they have more water when the stems are just like waiting to be designed for the bouquets. But I like to pull from the buckets with all the flowers, pull apart, exactly what I have in my recipes for the bride and bridesmaid bouquets and set them aside in their, what I call the building vases, so that the best of the best blooms are all pulled, separate, ready for the bouquet designing, which will be the next day, spoiler. But I like to pull them aside so that I have those perfect blooms for the most important pieces, which to me are the bouquets. So we pull aside the bouquet stems. If we didn't do it the day before, we'll design boutonnieres and corsages on Thursday, put them in the hydration chamber. If we didn't do it again the day before, we'll green the centerpieces. And if we have bud vases for that week, I'll usually do the bud vases Thursday. I find that when I have a wedding using bud vases, we're usually using like 70 or 120 or 180. And so I like to do them Thursday. The water tends to stay perfectly clean, just fine. You will want to make a note to double check the water on Saturday morning and make sure you don't need to switch it. But I would say 95, 98% of the time, they're perfectly fine. I like to do my bud vases Thursday. All right, so now it's Friday. On Friday, I make the bouquets, bride and bridesmaids. I have done them on Thursdays before as well, but ideally I like to do them Friday. I just feel like then they're nice and fresh. You're not gonna have any of the blooms wilt. I don't know, there's no other way to say it. I guess there probably is, but you know what I mean. Just to keep the bouquets nice and fresh, I like to design them on Friday. Like I said, we pulled the blooms Thursday, so I know I'm not going to end up with like the bottom of the barrel. But they're nice and fresh. So design the bouquets, those centerpieces that we greened Wednesday and or Thursday. I'll add the blooms on Friday. I just feel that they hold a lot better, especially if you are designing in Oasis foam. It's to me, I hate to design a piece too early and have it not be perfect the day that you need it perfect. So I wait till Friday to add those blooms to the centerpieces. Sometimes if it's hydrangea in foam, I will wait until wedding day to add those. But I also like to do ahead what I can so that delivery day is smooth. If the couple is having any meadow pieces like on the floor along their aisle by a sign in front of their sweetheart table, I'll do those on Friday. Same thing with sign pieces. So like a piece that goes up on the corner of the welcome sign. I like to do that Friday. Same thing. If I'm using foam, I like the blooms to stay fresher. So I wait till Friday. I also just, they're not that big of a piece. So to do it Friday works fine for me. A lot of times if I have flowers for the cake, I put them in just a clear plastic cup with a little note on there that says cake flowers, and I'll set them aside usually on Friday. I like to wait until Friday to do that because when you're designing the centerpieces, adding the blooms to the centerpieces, sometimes you get some breakage. You end up with a stem that's too small for what you need, but it could be perfect for a cake. So I wait until a little bit later. And as I'm designing, say, the bouquets, if I end up with a bunch of small green pieces that could work for a cake, I'll set them aside. And then, I already have that material for something like that. So that's why I wait on that. And then if there's like flower girl petals that just need to be bagged up, I'll do that Friday as well. Super similar to the cake flowers. You might find, oh, when you were processing, well, that was 3 days ago, but maybe when you're designing a rose had snaps and it's like, dang, that stinks. But guess what? It's perfectly fine because we have, we can use it for the petals. So rather than, Dee had a perfectly good rose on Thursday, I wait the extra day. If one happens to break, just, while I was designing, I can use that. But I also have roses allotted for that, so it doesn't really matter, but it just feels right to me to wait, and then I don't have that waste if something happened. Hopefully that makes sense, but basically those are the typical things that I do on Friday. And I know we're kind of buzzing through this, but I just, I didn't want to be hashing over it too much, but just to give you kind of an example of an idea that you can sort of springboard off, and make into your own thing. So then Saturday, it is wedding day. Wedding morning, I wake up early, so that not that early, but I wake up. I'll tell you right now, I wake up normally at 6. It depends on the venue, the size of the order. It varies a ton, but the most regular time that I wake up on wedding day is 6, with the plan that I will be in my workroom by 7. So I give myself an hour to wake up, get dressed, make breakfast, make sure you eat breakfast, even if it's a protein shake, you need to, eat. But I give myself an hour for that, which could I do it in half the time? I could, but I like to sort of like, I don't know, just mosey into the day a little bit. I'm excited, I'm nervous, but I don't want to be like rushing and skipping breakfast or, I don't know. So I wake up an hour early, give myself that hour to get ready for the day, and then I'm in the workroom. By 7, my staff typically starts normally at 8, but it's an hour after when I start. So I give myself that first hour. That's again a personal preference thing. I like to have that sort of like Zen hour before the chaos. Not that my staff is chaotic, but you know what? They are. If any of them are watching this, Ashley, Rachel, no, they're fun. We have fun and I love it, but I love my hour of Zen in the morning. So I go down there, I check. My first thing I do is look at everything, make sure like no freak accident happened, nothing randomly combusted overnight, which I don't think it ever has, so that's great. But I have to get my eyes on everything. Okay, shoo, nothing, started on fire overnight. Great. then I get to work. So I put the ribbon on my bouquets, add any final touches, like really delicate blooms, anything like that. Little, like if there's an old piece of lace she wanted on her bouquet, add that. And that's when I'll put the bouquets into their delivery vases and package them up. I am thinking I'll do a video at some point about how I package everything, but anyway. I need to take a breath. Sorry. Okay, so then finish the stems, the ribbons, package the bouquets, package and label the boutonnieres. I always put labels on my boutonnieres. Mine are just generic groom, groomsman, ring bearer, father of bride, grandfather, etc. But I make sure that they're labeled so that if I'm not the one pinning them on, it is easy. Even if I am the one pinning them on, it is easy to know which goes to who. Prep greenery if needed. So if we're doing an order where it's like the loose greenery, say around candles in the centerpiece, we prep the greenery. I call it lapping. I don't know if that's an official term, but that's what I call it. So cutting it down into little pieces and putting it in an extra flower box so that when we're on site, we just go wing, 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 throw them in. We're not cutting and trimming and having stems and, leaves flying everywhere at the venue. It's a lot easier and quicker to prep in the workroom. So we prep that. Green the arbor pieces. My arbor pieces, I almost always use chicken wire as the base, and we stick the greenery in at the studio in the workroom. Same thing. It's just easier to transport that way, in my opinion. The greens travel totally fine. They hold up fine. So I green them that morning, and we just take the chicken wire with the greens to the venue. And we're one step closer to having the arbor pieces done before we've even done any work at the venue. That's important to me. Consolidate the blooms that we are taking. So I'll go through, when I process, typically one bucket will have one variety in it. So by the end of designing everything, a lot of the buckets are getting a little empty. So I combine so that when we go to a venue, we only have to take 4, 6 buckets, hopefully, sometimes more, but I shoot for maybe 4 buckets that we would take, even if they're mixed. And those are usually all the blooms for the arbor. Sometimes there's some tabletop blooms in there, it just depends on the order, but I consolidate so that we're not taking 12 buckets that are all half full. That doesn't make sense. So we consolidate, we dump all the empty buckets, start doing some cleanup a little bit in the workroom. Box up the greens that we're taking. Anytime I take greens, do not take your greens in water. It's heavier and it's a pain and it's going to be messy. I take all my greens. I actually take them out, set them on the floor so they can drip dry a little. And then I pick them up and put them all in empty flower boxes. I just flump them in there. No lid on the box, nothing like that. I just stick them in, kind of aligned into the box like that. And like I said, I let them drip dry just like by the time I get to the end, and then I put the first ones in the box because I have found that they're surprisingly wet. And if you just throw them right in the box starts leaking water, like a waterfall, like more than you would think. I remember being shocked the first time. I was like, wow, there's like a stream of water coming out of the corner of that box. Maybe like I had to poke it with a knife and let it leak. So now I just let them drip dry literally for like 2 minutes, put them in, and we don't have like water streaming out of the box. Anyway. Sorry, that was kind of a side tangent, but we box up all the greens to go. Don't take them in water. We load and huddle with the team. So it's super important to me, and I think you should think about this for yourself, whether you want, not whether, I mean, you're going to have one whether you want or not, but what you want your wedding day rituals to be like. I have found it to be super helpful to get to a certain point, then let everyone everyone take 5, go to the bathroom, get a coffee, get a snack. Here's the cooler with snacks and drinks, help yourself. Everyone digs in and kind of like decompresses for maybe 5 minutes or so. While everyone's doing that, I'm going through the checklist, double checking. I literally check on my recipe sheet and on the order sheet that we have everything that we need, run through everything in my head, make sure we have the supplies that we need to finish the order. like ladders, tarps, tables, stuff like that, which you should be taking, especially if you're doing arbor installs. Um, anyway, so that's kind of how that goes. Then we convene and get together. I run through the order with everyone, the game plan for when we get there, how that's going to roll. Um, we do a moment where we go through, we kind of talk about which other vendors are hired so we can remember, like, oh yeah, it's this photographer, we worked with her that other week, this and that, or like, oh, this is the DJ. We kind of like make those connections, which is really cool. And then one thing that's important to me, we do a prayer before we leave. I I don't know how to. Wow. I clearly I'm still getting a little more comfortable with that. That was something that was important to me, but as you can tell, I'm not super comfortable talking about it yet. But you know what? I'm all about pushing the comfort zone. So yeah, we do a prayer before we leave. Typically, I lead it. I have had my sister-in-law is one of my staff that helped me, and she is comfortable with it. So I have had her pray before too. But typically we pray for our couple, for their marriage, for them to be blessed, for their families, for the staff, for safety for the guests, things like that. So that has been a really important pillar for me, just to ground us all, and send us off. And whatever you do, whether you choose to do something or not, like I kind of said before, you'll fall into a rhythm. So be mindful about what you want wedding morning to be like, especially those final moments before you head out into the chaos of actually setting it up. Just be mindful, figure out what's important to you, how you want that to feel, what you want it to look like, and set a ritual. I think that's almost one of the most important parts of my whole week, actually, are those moments right before we head out. Now, I'm not going to go into wedding day on site. That is going to be a whole separate conversation. And I feel like this was already packed with enough to start. But feel free to let me know if you have any questions. I think this was super fun. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I didn't talk too fast. I felt like I was packing a lot in there. But like I said, take what you like, switch things to suit you. But just, I hope that this is helpful to see like an overall view of what a typical wedding week is like for me. Stay tuned for next week. Still deciding exactly what the topic will be. Make sure you follow Rose Floral School. I'm on Instagram and TikTok. I would say the more in-depth, meaty content probably is Instagram, but TikTok is fun too. And let me know if you have any questions, if there was anything I mentioned that you're like, hey, tell me more about this or that. And have a beautiful day. Thank you so much.